if you wanted to. There's many cuts, and when the light shines on that in the specific light, boy, does it shine. Can you all see that? Gemstone. A gemstone. It's shiny, it's sparkly, it stands out. And Yeshua said this, He said, you are my people. You're a city set on a hill where people are supposed to see your good deeds, see you, admire you. It doesn't say we do everything to be seen, but they're going to notice that we're different. I want to ask you this morning, do people notice that you're different? Do they notice that we're different? Do they look and we see? What else did we learn about a segula? We learned that a segula is not just out in the open all the time, but what does a man do with a segula? He hides it. So he takes it and he wraps it up in a cloth. And a segula is seen first and then hidden. Now, in the days of ancient Israel, they didn't have pockets like we do, but they had a little pouch next to their heart. They would take that segula and they would put it in the pouch next to their heart to where nobody else could get it. How many of you know that if you're His treasure, He's got you? How many of you know that? He's got you. The word segula, and we're going to look at this concept today, but if it's a segula, it's not always out in the open. In fact, a segula will always be hidden. But not just hidden away forever, it comes back again. So you take the segula, you show the people, everyone sees the segula, but then it's hidden. But then it comes back again to everyone's surprise. And that's kind of a mystery. We learned that segula begins with a samek. The samek is the only Hebrew letter that is a closed Hebrew letter other than the mem sofit. Samek makes kind of the S sound. Everyone say segula. Hear the S sound in there? That's the samek. And so that is encircled. It almost looks like a circle. If we have it, I'm not sure that we do. But everyone would say, well, what's so important about that? Segula begins with the one word in Hebrew that represents a mystery. And the Bible has a lot to say about mysteries, doesn't it? It's a glory of the king. Listen, the king will conceal things. Do you know that you and I are hidden away in the Messiah? That we as a people, Scripture says, are hidden. Our life is hidden in the Messiah. That in the heavenlies, we're somewhere in the heavenlies. Listen, how many of you are born from above or born again? You know Messiah? Hold your hands up. We're the only people in the world that can be two places at one time. So think about this for a moment. You are here, but you are there. Our lives are here. We're here in the physical. I know that sounds kind of strange. We're here in the physical, but we're also in the heavenlies. We're seated in the heavenlies in Messiah. Can you see that? No. You're like that segula that's hidden away. Turn to your neighbor and say, you're a treasure. See, we don't hear that enough. We don't understand. A lot of times people tend to think that Adonai, that God is this one who is ready to play whack-a-mole and whack people in the head. You know, He's ready to judge. And yet, listen, we do serve an awesome king, but He loves us. He loves us. He says, you're my treasure. I've set you apart. I've called you out. And so we see with Israel, He called them out. Isn't it interesting, the thing with Israel is that He called them out, the great mystery that there would be a people who would literally have Adonai's presence with them where they went. They're called into a land. It's interesting, they're called into a land, but then they sin against the word, and they're scattered. You know what's interesting about that? The word for scattered is connected to the word segula. The galut. Everyone say galut. Israel, you're called to be my people. My presence is with you. Go and teach the nations my word. That's the responsibility when He gives us His presence and He gives us the word. It's not so that we can sit around, raise our hands and go, isn't this awesome? Now, how many know that is fun? But that's not all we're called to do. We're called to take the word and teach other people about our God. Just as they were in the days of ancient Israel, they served there were nations that served weird gods. You start studying about the Baalim and the Ashtoreth and all these other gods that the nations served. They didn't know truth. Think about the Romans and the Greeks. Think about all the civilizations on through the lineage. They didn't know the God of Israel. And so Israel, you're called to be my people. I'm with you. Carry the word and teach the nations. Israel decided they were going to do their own thing. They're going to do their own thing. They're in the land. Their sin had separated them from Adonai. So guess what He does? They're now called to be in the galut, which is the diaspora, the exile. But watch this. The word for redeem is gela, is galu. It has to do with segula as well. So when we talk about a redeemer, how many of you know that our God is a redeemer? The ge'ulah, the ones that He would redeem. He said, I'm going to redeem you and I'm going to bring you back to this place where you belong. In your land and in your borders, and you'll be a light unto the nations again. We're still waiting on some of that to be fulfilled, aren't we? Redeemer. Let me read to you just a couple scriptures here. I want you to see this. I don't want to give just two scriptures and say, okay, that's it. But you need to understand, Deuteronomy 26, verse 18, also today Adonai is proclaiming you to be His special people, Am Segula, just as He promised you that you should keep His, what? Commandments. Interesting. Malachi 3:17, they shall be mine, says Adonai Tzevod, on the day that I will make them my jewels, and I will spare them as a man spares his own son who serves him. Psalm 135, verse 4 says this, for Adonai, Yahweh has chosen Jacob for Himself, Israel for His special treasure. Before we get haughty today, you know, there's some people that say, well, we're a chosen people. But understand this. You have to hear this. In the Hebrew, the concept is, I have chosen you more than anyone else. And the reason, again, was to take my word. That's what sets you apart from everybody else is my word, my presence and my word. And that's why you're an Am Segula. If we ever lose the concept, whether you're a Jew or a Gentile here today, if you know the Messiah, Yeshua, and how many of you do? I saw you wave your hands. Then you are His Am Segula. You're set apart. But there's a reason why we're set apart, and it is to take the word to the nations. When we lose that concept of understanding why we're set apart as a people, we've lost it. Most believers today in our society, and hear me when I say this, most believers try to look like the world and try to be like the world. How close can we be to looking like the world? When we start to do that, guess what? I would question, are we really Am Segula? We're not called. How many of you know you're not called to look like the world? We're not called to be the world. We're not called to be the world. We're called to be His people. So let's continue this. What's the mystery? We talked about Sod, Segula, beginning with Sod. What's the mystery of the gospel of Messiah? What's God's mystery, guys? What is that thing? I want you to think about this. What is that thing that the angels longed to look into for thousands of years since the beginning of time? Salvation in Yeshua. That Adonai Himself would come as a man. The Bible tells us He came. The mystery, the great mystery of godliness is this, that God came in the flesh. Elohim came in the flesh. First He says, I draw you to my people. You're my people. I'm drawing you to me. But now the great mystery is this. He stepped down from heaven, took that glory cloud, wrapped Himself in flesh. Remember, a segula is hidden. How many know the glory of God is probably like a gemstone? Can you imagine seeing the glory? The Shekinah, the light, the glory of Messiah. And so that glory steps down from heaven and hides Himself in flesh. And Isaiah said it this way. He said, God is with us. Ultimately, that would be a virgin would conceive and give birth, and God is with us. The mystery of it fulfilled in Isaiah, fulfilled in Yeshua, is that Yeshua stepped down, took on flesh, died for us, hidden away in a tomb, like a segula, but He comes back again in His form. Now watch this. Now, He's out in the open for people to see, but He's still kind of hiding. He's revealing Himself to certain people. But then what happens to Him? He's taken up into heaven, and now the segula is hidden away again. Everyone say segula. But He's not going to stay hidden. How many know He's coming back again? The world can't see Him. The mystery of it is this. The world doesn't know this. The world can't see Him. He's hidden away. He will come back again. He will reveal Himself again. The interesting concept is when we receive by faith Yeshua as the Word of God. In the beginning was the Word was with God, and the Word was God. For God gave His segula, His only begotten Son, His one and only Son. How many of you are sons and daughters of the Most High? Do you know why? Because of His Son, His segula. It cost Him something. A segula will cost you something. So Adonai gave His Son that cost Him. It cost Him His heart. That's His heart. And we as believers try to figure out, okay, we got Father, and then, but how do we get Son, and how do we get Spirit? And everybody always asks, what about the Trinity? Listen, guys, there's things that we're not even supposed to figure out. You're never going to figure it out until you see face to face. How many know there are still some things of a mystery to our faith, right? We call it the echad, the unity. It's not, I say, a unity of the Godhead. It's Father, Son, and Spirit. But you have to understand that it cost for Him to give His life for us. And so now when we say, well, I'll receive that word by faith, I'll receive His presence, I believe in His word, just like Israel stood at the mountain and said, we will do, we will hear, we'll do it. So when we say, yes, we believe that Yeshua is His only begotten Son, He died on a tree for us and rose again, that He is our Redeemer. Remember the word for Segula and Redeemer? Connection there. Turn your neighbor and say, it's a connection. Titus 2:14 and 15, who gave Himself for us that He might redeem, Ge'ulah, He might redeem us from every lawless deed, purify for Himself His own special people, His Segula. Even the New Testament, the Renewed Covenant speaks of a Segula. Why? He says that we are zealous for good works. Speak these things, exhort, rebuke with all authority. Let no one despise you. You want to know if you're a true Segula? You want to know? How many want to know? The Bible tells us to check ourselves so that we won't be... If we judge ourselves, guys, listen, check yourself. What are you speaking? You believe in Yeshua? Are you speaking His covenant? Are you speaking His word? What are you doing with your hands? What's your life like? Is it costing you something? Is it costing you something? Does it mean something? I can stand up here and hold this, and everybody goes, oh, it's beautiful, it's so pretty. But it costs something. There's a price to be paid. We have to, as believers, understand the concept of there is a price to be paid for the things to understand the mysteries of the Godhead of Yeshua. Sometimes we don't understand that. I want you to see, let me go here. I wasn't planning on going there so soon. Let me read to you out of Ephesians. Y'all getting anything out of this today? Good. Let's go to Colossians 3:1. If then you are raised with Messiah, seek those things which are above, where Messiah is sitting at the right hand of Elohim. Colossians 3:4. When Messiah, who is our life, appears, then you will also appear with Him in glory. Listen, guys, if you believe in Yeshua and you've been filled with His Ruach, that is a Segula. How many of you have the Spirit of Messiah today? For those of you that don't, we will pray for you right now. Father, give them the Spirit of Messiah. That's a Segula. That's a treasure. That's a gem. And we have that gem within us. And Steve, we can't see it, but we can see the results of it. We can listen to see what are we speaking, what are we doing with our hands. If we really have the Segula in us, the presence of Messiah, we will speak what we're to speak, the right things. We're to speak the word of Adonai. Turn to your neighbor and say, speak His word. We're to take that word. We're to speak that word. We're to tell others about the God of Israel. We're to give others hope, to pray for others, to bring hope and life. And we're to do with our hands. We're to do with our hands. Not just speak it, but to do it. Turn to your neighbor and say, do it. Ephesians 2:6, and He's raised us up together and He's made us sit together in heavenly places in Messiah Yeshua, hidden away. Colossians 1:27, to them God willed to make known what are the riches of the glory of this mystery among the Gentiles, who is Messiah in you. Say it with me, Messiah in you. Say it again, Messiah in you, the hope of glory. Now here's the mystery. Let's dig a little deeper. The mystery is this, it's not just about the Jews anymore. But now it's also the Gentiles. In other words, it wasn't just a Jewish thing. It started to the Jew first and then to the Gentiles. How many Gentiles do we have in the house that are glad to be in the Messiah? So guess what? Now the Gentiles can understand, He's my God too. And I receive His word and I'll do it and I'll take that covenant. I believe in His word. Now we're one grafted in. Jew and Gentile, one in the Messiah. Come on, let's give Him a hand clap of praise. So now we have this treasure that's in us. A hidden treasure. It's hidden away. People begin to see things happening, things changing. I want us to read parables, just a couple parables on the segula. You've probably never seen it as such. But go to Matthew 13. We're going to start at verse 44. What's a parable, guys? A parable is a story that's meant to have a lesson. It's to teach you something. A parable is a story that's hidden. It's like a segula. It's hidden. It's a story, but there's a purpose in that story. How many know Yeshua just didn't say words to say words? It's a story, Matthew 13, verse 44. Again, the kingdom of heaven is like treasure. Everybody say treasure. The kingdom of heaven is like treasure that's hidden in a field in which a man found and hid, and for joy over it, he goes and he sells all that he has and he buys that field. He sells all that he has. It costs him something. Now, understand the story. Let me see your eyes. Understand the story. Here is a man, the field does not belong to him, but yet he finds a treasure in a field. So he says, oh, there's a treasure here, which would be a segula. It's something of value. Understand, it is something of value. He goes and he sells half his stuff. Everybody say everything. He gave everything up so that he could purchase that segula. And so I want to look at a couple things here today. First, you have to recognize that there's something of value there. Most of us, I believe today, I'm hoping not here, but most of us we become believers, we say yes to the good news, and we begin to walk this out, and then we just kind of go through life and we forget about the segula that's in us. We really recognize no value in it. Well, it's just something we do. We go to congregation, we pray, we hope things happen. We go through life, and we never recognize the segula, the cost that he paid for us. You say, well, Rabbi, this is about a man purchasing a field. Ultimately, listen, it is about Yeshua who recognizes a jewel in people. Not just a Jew anymore, but I believe this part is to the Jew. He said, I recognize. Now watch, I'm not done yet. He said, I recognize that there's value. And so Yeshua gave all that he had to purchase people. To the Jew first. But you have to recognize value in it. I find it interesting this week. I was talking with someone about a story on the internet. Actually, it was on the news that a gentleman had went to a thrift store. Did you all see that story? He went to a thrift store and he paid $70 for an old couch. So he takes the couch home and he's sitting on the couch and he says, something wrong with this couch. It just doesn't feel right. It's just not comfortable. Well, my first thing would be for $70, what do you expect, you know? He's sitting on the couch, nothing. And finally his daughter said, well, Dad, she said, have you looked at it? So she takes the cushion off and she unzips the cushion, and they found something very interesting. They found money stuffed in the cushion of the couch. Not just money, they found $100 bills. There was over $42,000 stuffed. Anybody see the story? It was stuffed in the cushion, and she said, well, Dad, no wonder it wasn't comfortable. They're pulling out $100 bills, over $42,000. And so what's interesting is, we were talking about this, that the man said, in good conscience, he said, I couldn't keep it. I couldn't keep it in good conscience. So he tracks down whoever the original owner is who died. So then he tracks down the grandchildren, and he tells them, hey, $42,000, it's all yours. And they didn't give him anything, from my understanding, as a reward. And so the person I was talking to said, well, you know, what if the person, if it were me, I would have said, well, guess what? Hey, I found $20,000 in your couch. And I would have kept half. And I said, what makes you think he didn't do that already? Maybe he did. My point is this, he didn't recognize value in that. But when he found the value, you know, technically, legally, that money was his. How many of you know that? Because he bought it. It was his. They sold it, gave it away. They didn't know. My point is this. Yeshua is telling a story about a man who gave everything up to purchase a segula because he recognized the value in it. Yeshua saw everything in his people to say, those are mine. I'm going to redeem them. They missed the point. I'm going to redeem them. I'm going to bring them back to me again. Polish them up. They may have a few cuts. How many of you have ever been cut or wounded But you have to understand that this stone, if you ever see it in its raw form, I have sapphires in raw form. I have big sapphires. I'm a rock collector, guys. Been so since I was a kid. And I have these sapphires in raw form. And they're pretty, but they're not like this. It's cut. And so he said, my people have been cut, my people have been wounded. But you know what? Yeshua was cut and wounded for us. And bruised for us and went through it for us. And he gave his all. He gave his all for us as a people. And now I'm going to ask you the question today. Do you give your all for him? Do we recognize that there's value in him? You say, well, Rabbi, I've given him my heart. But let me ask you another question. Are we spending time with him? Do we recognize the value? Do we just kind of go through life? And how many of you know life can be busy? I told my wife the other day, I said, am I the only one that feels like my life is like this star that is on warp speed, and I'm just going, whoosh, and it's almost like I'm catching glimpses of everything as they're happening, and I'm just going, whoosh. Am I the only one that ever feels that way? Life can be so fast and so furious and everything happening. We need to take time to recognize his presence with us and his presence in us. And that may mean setting time aside to get away from people, get away from TV, turning off your phones, come on, and appreciating the jewel that's in you that is the Spirit of Messiah. There are things that will happen because of that. If you will take the time, and listen, I'm preaching to myself. If you will take the time, if we will as a community, we'll see greater things happen in our lives and in those around us. But we're not that way as a nation. We want it now. We want our popcorn now, microwave now, put it in, let's go. If it's not done, I chuckle sometimes because I want my popcorn in 2 minutes and 34 seconds. If it's not done, I get impatient. I say, my gosh, what happened to the days of Jiffy Pop when you had to put it on anybody remember those days? You had to wait for it. I'm using this as an example to say, we want it now. We want the healings now, and we want this now, and we want the breakthroughs now. And how much time are we spending in his word and with him? Segula, do we recognize it? Are we willing to give of ourselves more to him? More to him, because he gave his all for us. Let's go to the next one. We're not done yet. Let's look at the next one. Again, the kingdom of heaven, everybody say kingdom of heaven, is like a merchant seeking beautiful pearls, who when he had found one pearl of great, one pearl of great price, he went and he sold all that he had and he bought it. A pearl, in the Jewish mindset, a pearl can be valuable, but where does a pearl come from? Unclean. You know what, if you want to look at this, the treasure represents the Jew, the pearl represents the Gentile. But he's saying, I want you to pay close attention. It doesn't mean the Gentile is unclean or secondhand. But Gentiles were considered unclean by Jewish people because they didn't have the Word. They didn't have Torah. I mean, they're eating anything they want to eat, and they're following pagan gods and doing everything else. Are you all with me on that? I'm talking about what they did, what some people still do. It's interesting. So Yeshua said this, not just to the Jew, but to the Gentile. They are my people. They are my people, and there's value in that person. There's value in those people. And so Yeshua said, I'm willing to give everything I got to purchase them. And you know what we do? Yeshua, say this with me, Yeshua gave it all for me. You know what we do? We fail to realize that. Well, he gave it all for everybody else, but what about for me? Can I ask you a serious question? When was the last time you saw yourself as a segula? Probably not a long time. Because we go through life, we don't realize it. But he tells us in his word, you are of great value. And the people beside you today are of great value. Do you understand the people who are here, the person, your neighbor beside you, is of great value? There is no one else like that person. Turn to your neighbor and tell them there's nobody else like you. Because of him. Because of him. See, please don't confuse this with saying, well, Rabbi's teaching like some of these guys and, pop psychology. That's not what I'm teaching the word to you here. Messiah in you, the hope of glory, the segula. And if I can even break it down to another level when we think about this, do we recognize those areas where we would say, that's unclean? Nothing good can come out of that. But Yeshua looks past that, and he says, you don't see past? Sometimes we just stop at the dirt. Nothing good can come out of that dirt. What about the treasure in the dirt? When I was a kid, there was something about treasure that I liked. See, I'll give you just a little bit of backstory. My dad was a rock collector. I had a dad who was a gemologist. I had a stepdad who was a gemologist. And while we weren't fishing, you know how most kids play with marbles? I had these. Seriously, I would have envelopes of these. I'd take them to school and we'd play with them as kids. Dad and stepdad were both jewelers. And it gave me an appreciation for such things of value that I would love. And so we would play treasure hunt. So we decided at one time I'll never forget this, we were in school, barber school in Akron, Ohio. Never forget this, little kid. And I told my friends, we're going to play treasure. And so we had all this chocolate. And we took the chocolate, we put it in a bag, and we buried it. We buried the chocolate. So we went to find it later, and we could never find it. We didn't know what happened to the chocolate. Well, how many know chocolate melts and dissolves in the ground? But there was something about looking for that treasure, and we searched for that treasure for days in the ground. A lot of times we just stop at the dirt and not recognize what's in it. The jewel, the segula, or maybe the pearl. We look at the clam and we go, well, there's nothing good can come out of that. But something good can come out of the things in us. Maybe that's a person that's in your family. You say, nothing good can come out of that. Do we recognize the gifts? Do we recognize the abilities in people, even within ourselves? How about situations that you say, nothing good can come out of that situation? That's a bad situation. Or that really happened to me? Oh, that's so terrible. All things work together for good to them that love the Messiah. How many of you love the Messiah? All things work. I can't tell you that I understand all things, but I can tell you all things work together for good. And He's faithful. A segula says this, I'm faithful to you. A segula is a treasure to say, I'm faithful. Well, nothing good can come out of those situations, but if you know He's faithful, He'll make it a segula. Well, why did that have to happen? Don't know, but He'll make it a segula. Segula. Interesting. I'll talk about this today. A segula. Can anything good come out of Nazareth? Can I break it down to you kind of like this area? Can anything good come out of Crestline? Anything good come out of Mount Vernon? Little towns, little places we go, what can ever happen there? Can anything good come out of Dalton, Ohio? Hello, we did. Praise Messiah. Segula. Little things that we don't even recognize. Start to recognize, start spending time and recognizing and standing on the Word that He can take those situations that look bad and unclean and bring it about for your good and His glory. Let me take this to another level. This has to do with a wife. A segula has to do with a wife. Everybody say a wife. When a man in ancient Israel would marry a woman, there were two parts to the ceremony. There was the kiddushin that set her apart. He would propose to her basically. He would put the cup before her and say, I want to marry you. Okay? He would give her a bride price, but he would also supply her with a segula, with a jewel. Remember Rebecca? When he was when he gave her the jewelry, he was purchasing her as a bride for her husband. A segula is something that is saying, you're mine. You're mine. So you have the kiddushin that sets the bride apart. He goes away for a year, and basically he hides for a year. Segula. I am my beloved's, and he is mine. Would you like to marry me? I always joke around about this. Can you imagine, guys, if we proposed to our girls and said, honey, would you marry me? And we get down on one knee, and she says yes, and they say, I'll see you in about a year or two. The kiddushin, the setting apart, because she's special. And so she's hidden away from society, from other men. He is hidden away, preparing a place in his Father's house for his bride. And what do we do, guys, now I'm not going to say purchase our wives, because we don't purchase them. But when we get engaged, ladies, what did he give you? How many of you got jewelry when you got engaged? Some of those didn't? Oh, we'll pray for you. That's sad. Normally, the normal part is when you get engaged, he gives you a ring. He gives you a segula. Now, why does he do that? Because he's stating, I am faithful to you. You have to understand the Jewish concept is when you have a segula as a bride, it's making a statement to her, I'm faithful to you. I'll protect you. I'll keep you. I'm coming back for you. I'm coming back for you. Everybody say segula. Let me read a couple more things. Isaiah 54, verse 6. Watch the concept here. For Adonai has called you like a woman forsaken, like a youthful wife when you were refused, says your God. Verse 8. With a little wrath I hid my face for a moment, the segula. But with everlasting kindness I will have mercy on you, says Adonai, your Redeemer, the Geulah, the Redeemer of the segula. How many of you are redeemed in Messiah? And he says this, I'm faithful to you. Israel, to the Jew first, I'm coming back for you. But watch this, to the nations, to the Gentile, both Jew and Gentile, I'm coming back for you. I gave you my word. I gave you my spirit. How many of you have the spirit of Messiah, the Ruach, that you have a segula? And he's saying, I will be faithful to come and get you. He's hidden away now, but he'll reveal himself. Guess what? When he comes back, we're going to be segula. We're going to be shining just like he is. Let me keep reading because I want you to see the concept. Isaiah 54, 10 and 12. For the mountains shall depart, the hills be removed, but my kindness shall not depart from you, nor shall my covenant of shalom be removed, says Adonai, who has mercy on you. O you afflicted one, tossed with tempest and not comforted, behold, I will lay your stones with colorful gems. Everyone say segula. I'll lay your foundations with sapphires. I'll make your pinnacles rubies, the gates of crystal, and all your walls of precious stones. Now this is speaking, we would say, well, what's this speaking of, Rabbi? It's ultimately the new Jerusalem that will come down out of the heavens. How many of you have ever been to Jerusalem? You ever see, does it look like this yet? Just wait. Wait till that segula is revealed in the heavens, the dwelling place. When he gave us his spirit, if I can say this, when he gave us his spirit, that segula, he's making a statement. Jew and Gentile, whoever you are today, one in the Messiah, he's saying this, I'm faithful to you. I'll be faithful to you. And it may look bad and it may look rough and it may look tough, but it's going to work out and I'm faithful. We've been through me personally, I've been through several things in life, and I can tell you, time and time again, faithful, 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 faithful. As I prepared this, Adonai spoke to my heart. I saw a picture. A lot of times he'll speak to me in pictures. And I saw a picture. And he said, I want you to call. And I heard this in my spirit. He said, I want you to call people up just to share briefly about my faithfulness. If you can tell me, just real quick, you tell me of a time, you can say, he's been faithful to me in this situation. I want you real quick to come up. And just real quick, tell me. Come on. I know there's people here because he said there would be. So come on. In your life, not everybody, one at a time, just a few folks. Tell me, Todd, give me a minute. I got to hold it. A minute.
The rabbi had prayer over me about a month ago, and in the spirit, he said that he saw a crown on my head and that in my workplace, God would show favor. Well, last week, I got the biggest raise at work in this Japanese company ever.
Wow.
And I got to meet a brother in the Lord. I said, Lord, please send a male friend that loves you, Lord. And he sent this Mexican friend, and we talk about the Lord, and it came to pass.
And Todd said, Rabbi, I've been there how many years?
Almost 25 years.
He said, I've never received promotion. He said, they will not promote me. We prayed, you got promoted. Praise Yeshua. Let's give him a hand. Yes.
My son had bladder cancer back in, well, it's been 2 years, but he had surgery in July 24th, and they were able to get all the cancer out of him, and he is healed.
Amen. Say faithful. Faithful.
With my cancer, I just found out recently that my marker numbers are coming down. So that is my big praise.
Amen. Faithful.
3 weeks ago when I got a phone call from a police department in Delaware telling me that my son had been injured, but they didn't have any details, and I am freaking out thinking he's either been shot or in a serious car accident. He had been burnt trying to do some recovery on the highway, but the doctors have said that he's going to be fine. He will regain full use of his hand and his arm, and, praise
Faithful.
God, all the glory to God.
Faithful. Amen.
As long as you folks have ever known me, I've had health issues. I had my time and period. I couldn't walk. I couldn't dress myself. I couldn't bathe myself. Today I can. Hallelujah.
Amen. I'm saving you for last.
Okay, 1968.
1 minute.
I was outlaw at that time, a vice president. The Hells Angels put a bounty on me. Dead. Whoever got me would have got a brand new Harley of their choice. The Heavenly Father covered me for 44 years.
Amen. Come on. Real quick.
July 10th, 2015, my dad went to the hospital because his legs swelled up so huge. I didn't know what was wrong with him, and the doctors acted like they had no clue. They kicked him out to the nursing home to die. And I prayed about it, and I said, God, I don't have a clue what's wrong with him. Could you at least give me a hint? And I went and looked on the internet for leg swelling and looked up, it came up back with lymphedema. And he got treated for it, and by Christmas he was able to walk.
Amen. Faithful.
A lot of you have prayed for me to have restoration with my grandkids, and my granddaughter's restored to me. We're in a relationship now, and the others are coming, so praise the Lord.
Now, before you go, because see, I only told him a minute. Yeah, this is years. We're talking years. 4 years. I remember when she came to me in tears because the grandchildren were offended, got cut off. They cut themselves off. We stood and prayed, and Adonai is what? Faithful.
Faithful.
Amen.
My son passed away, and then there were some things that happened.
But he's faithful.
And he is faithful because he always comes through for us.
Comes through.
Always.
Amen. Amen.
I had severe drug addiction for 10 years, and I've been clean for 2.
Hallelujah. Hallelujah.
I was in a hellish situation for 5 years. Every mitzvah that I wanted to do was a struggle. It cost me $30,000 to get out of that situation. Now I have a husband who celebrates every mitzvah with me, encourages me to do more, and that same money has been restored and is now $100,000.
Wow. Faithful. We could share stories all day. I could tell you stories in my own family of one time my son swallowed a quarter and the doctors couldn't. Oh yeah, he swallowed a quarter. You should see that. I still have the x-ray. I took the quarter. My son, we couldn't figure out what was wrong with him. He wasn't eating. He just sat there like this. He was like 2. He just sat there. And I said, what's wrong? And we figured out he swallowed a quarter. So he just sat real still. We tried to get him to throw it up and tried to get him popsicle. He just wouldn't move. Took him to the doctor. It found out, they said if he had moved and it had dislodged where it was, he would have suffocated. That we have to go in and get it. So they put him out. They went in. They got the quarter. The doctor came out. I'll never forget that. He said, this is the most expensive quarter you will ever have. I have that quarter framed and in my home to remind me that God is faithful. I can tell you story upon story. You may not be there yet. You might be in the process. But we share that today to say Adonai is faithful. I want to close with this. I have a surprise for you, but I want to close with this. Let's go to Revelation. When it's all said and done. Isaiah 61:10, I will greatly rejoice in Adonai. My soul shall be joyful in my God. For he's clothed me with the garments of salvation. He's covered me with a robe of righteousness. As a bridegroom decks himself with ornaments, as a bride adorns herself with jewels. Segula. Revelation 21:1-3, I saw a new heaven and a new earth. Everybody say new heaven. John, he says, then I, John, saw the holy city, New Jerusalem, coming down out of heaven from God, prepared as a bride, adorned for her husband. And I heard a loud voice from heaven saying, behold, the tabernacle of God is with men. God with us. And he will dwell with them, and they shall be his people, and God himself will be with them and be their God. And last one, Revelation 21:9-11, Look at, come, I will show you the bride, the Lamb's wife. He carried me away in the Spirit to a great and high mountain, and he showed me a great city, the holy Jerusalem, descending out of heaven from God, having the glory of God. Her light was like a most precious stone, like a jasper stone, clear as crystal. A segula. I'm going back to this mic. Back to this mic. A segula. Segula. When a man takes a bride and he gets engaged, he gives her the engagement ring. That's the first segula. Then there's a work and process. When he takes her, and finally the second process is the nisuin, the lifting up of the bride. He goes and he carries her off. He lifts her up and carries her off to be in the Father's house with him forever. Then, think about that. Even in our culture, what do? She gets the engagement ring first, and then she gets the wedding ring. That is her segula, to say that he's faithful. He'll always be faithful. How many know when Adonai purchased us, he gave us his Spirit as a segula, and he said, I'm coming back. And when he comes back, you know our wedding ring? It's going to shine. That wedding ring is going to descend from heaven, the New Jerusalem, and it's going to shine. And you know what makes that? Can I just say this? You know what makes that? I believe, it's every trial, it's every instance, it's every struggle that we've overcome. Everything. That's why the crowns are cast at his feet. We're overcomers, but he does it in us and through us. How many of you know that? Every trial, every struggle is producing that, another facet. And then when it's all said and done, he says, now it's time, go get your bride. The shofar sounds, then we shine, he shines, and down comes the wedding ring. Isn't that awesome? Come on, let's give him a hand clap of praise. Would you like that segula? That is yours. Now, remember I said I had a friend in Pennsylvania? Everybody gets a segula today. Hallelujah. Michael, would you come? One, I'm going to ask, I'm hoping that we have enough for everybody. I'm going to ask you to stand if you would. I want to say the blessing over you. If you would like a segula, I put them in little jars, and there's a reason why I did this. Listen, this is not a glass stone. This is a real stone. You take it and let it remind you of who he is in you and what he's doing in you. But I want you to see the reason why it's in a jar. We have this treasure in earthen vessels, that you are his segula. He doesn't look at you as a normal person. You're not normal. Turn to your neighbor and say, you're not normal. And there's a reason for it. So, she's saying she always said that about him. He's not normal. Well, we're not normal. But there's a reason. There's a reason why we're not normal. Yeah.
I just wanted to say, the Segula, his people, when you look at the gym, there's so many different facets. We all don't look alike.
We're all different.
All over the world, we're all different.
Yeah. Amen. Roger, would you come? I want to say the blessing over you. And then if you'd like a segula, I'm hoping we have enough. If for some reason we don't have enough, and I'm going to ask our visitors, if you'd like one first, you're allowed to come up first. But and then everyone else. If we don't have enough, we have some loose stones here, and then if we run out of those, I will get more for you, okay? So no sadness today. This is a day that I want you to leave understanding. You are a segula. You're a segula. You're a treasure to Adonai, and he's our treasure. Amen? Roger. Before we come, I want to say the blessing over you. I'll transfer to Mike 8. Yivrech Adonai vayishmerecha Yair Adonai panav elecha vihunecha Yisai Adonai panav elecha v'sem lecha shalom. May Yahweh bless you and keep you. And may he lift his countenance upon you and be gracious to you. May Yahweh lift his face and shine upon you and give you shalom. In the name of Yeshua, the Prince of Peace, the Sar Shalom. And Father, I pray for every person in this house and every person that's watching in the sound of my voice, that, Father, that we will see the value that you see in us, and we'll value our relationship with you even more, Father. Forgive us as a people for not doing so. Help us do mighty things through and in your people. And we ask these things in the mighty name of Yeshua, the Sar Shalom. And all his people said, Amen. Amen. So if you're a visitor, we're going to ask you to first come up. And parents, I know that these are not for children. These would be for the parents. So if you want a segula, please come up. And Shabbat Shalom. Send us off with some lively music.